Here are 10 gigantic ships that you can watch rusting away alone and deserted. Let's start with the Argo Merchant. This 195-meter-long and 25-meter-wide oil tanker was built in 1953 in Germany and christened as Arcturus. After a few years and 2 name changes, however, more and more problems occurred. From 1964 to 1973, the ship was involved in 14 accidents, including collisions and even 2 strandings in Indonesia and Sicily, but it somehow survived. Shortly after renaming the ship again and giving it the name Argo Merchant, another accident occurred. This time, it was going to be its last one though. In bad weather, the ship got into the Nantucket Shoals where it stranded and later broke apart. 25,000 tons of oil leaked and flowed into the ocean, which caused one of the biggest oil pollutions in history. The cause were various deficiencies of the ship's equipment. For example, the gyro compass and the radio pillar were broken, which, in conjunction with bad weather, caused the ship to get much closer to the coast than planned. Carroll A. Deering. This 78-meter-long sailing ship was built in 1919 for $270,000, which would now be the equivalent of about $3.1 million, and its purpose was to carry up to 3,500 tons of coal across the sea. 2 years later, on January 31, 1921, the beautiful 5-masted ship was found stranded on the Diamond Shoals. The most mysterious thing about it is that not a single member of the crew was found on the abandoned ship. The investigation found that, just before the mysterious disappearance, the crew had been preparing a meal. In addition to the missing crew members, the navigation technology, logbooks, and personal belongings of the men were nowhere to be found either. The 2 main anchors and the lifeboats of the ship were gone too. There were only a hungry cat and a few mysterious things on board. A good example are the 3 pairs of boots found in the captain's cabin, of which none had actually belonged to the captain. The crew and the lifeboats were never seen again, even though search parties were looking for them for almost 2 months. Until today, it's still unclear what actually happened back then. MV Signa. This was a 217-meter-long bulk carrier from Norway that weighed 53,000 tons and was used to transport goods such as ore, coal, and the like. When the ship was anchored off the coast of Newcastle, there was a report of a strong storm that would soon arrive going around, which is why all ships near Newcastle were sent back out into the sea. Most of them complied, but the Signa stayed where it was, and that was a big mistake. The next day, the wind of over 165 kilometers per hour caused the ship to drift towards the coast. Unfortunately, turning the engines on didn't help, so it stranded on Stockton Beach. Despite the strong storm, the crew was rescued by daring search and rescue teams with helicopters. The Signa itself was only scrap afterwards, though. Nevertheless, it remained at exactly the same spot as a landmark. Over the years, however, it continuously got smaller and rustier until a storm in 2016 ensured that it almost completely submerged. World Discoverer. This was an 87-meter-long cruise ship built in Germany. The World Discoverer was steered through the southern Pacific and sometimes the frosty Arctic waters with 225 passengers for 25 years, almost without any incidents. Until April 30, 2000, when the ship sailed through the Sandley Passage of the Solomon Islands and encountered a reef that slit the starboard side of the ship wide open. The captain wanted to prevent it from sinking and steered the damaged World Discoverer 2.5 kilometers further into the shallow waters of the Roderick Dhu Bay, where it ran aground. The entire crew could be safely evacuated and nobody was harmed. Today, the ship is still exactly where it stranded 18 years ago. Only that all objects that were needed or could be sold have been removed by the locals. The owners have long forgotten about the ship that will simply keep on rusting until it completely disappears one day. However, we don't really know how much fuel is still left in the tank. Should it get a leak, the environment might suffer a lot of damage. Currently, the World Discoverer still serves as a tourist attraction, and the locals even unofficially offer tours to visit the wreck. Selendang Ayu. This freighter, with a length of 225 meters and a width of 32 meters, was built in 1998 in China, but was operated under the Malaysian flag. On November 28, 2004, the freighter was on its way to China with 60,000 tons of soybeans on board. In addition to the cargo holds, the tank of the huge ship was completely full as well, so there were 1,100 tons of oil in it. After a few days, the engine failed, and despite several attempts to repair it, It couldn't be started again. Meanwhile, the freighter continued to drift towards the Aleutian Islands. At the same time, the weather got worse, the waves got higher, and the wind speed continued to rise. A tug came to help, but it couldn't do much except slow the huge ship down a little. A second tug should have done the trick, but the rope with which the cargo ship was attached to the tugs came off and could not be reattached because of the bad weather. That's why the crew cast the anchor. But even that didn't help much, and after an hour, the ship was moving towards the islands again. The crew was evacuated by rescue helicopters, but even here many things went wrong, and a helicopter crashed with the already rescued crew members. The freighter broke into two parts and tons of oil leaked into the water, in addition to the 60,000 tons of soybeans. The cleanup of the spilled oil cost over $100 million. By now, there's not much left of the ship either. A storm has caused most of its remains to sink. Duke of Lancaster. This used to be a passenger ferry from the United Kingdom. The 114-meter-long ship was completed in 1956 in the same shipyard as the Titanic. After that, it was sold to Empirewise, which hauled the ship to North Wales. There, the Duke of Lancaster was renamed the Fun Ship and about to be turned into a floating hotel, mall, and museum. However, these plans were rejected because of the high costs, and after a year-long legal dispute, the meanwhile rusty ship was simply abandoned. Graffiti artists brightened up the ferry and it became a popular landmark in the area. Ghost Fleet. America's National Defense Reserve Fleet is located in Suisun Bay near San Francisco and has been around since 1950. Even though there used to be several additional reserve fleets in strategic locations off the US coast, most have been disposed of by now. The reserve fleet at Suisun Bay is still on standby and could in theory be mobilized any time in case of an emergency. However, it is completely outdated and rusty by now, so getting it ready would most likely not be possible anyway. The various types of ships that are still floating in the sea will probably be scrapped in the near future. Al Fahad. This huge ship is from the Netherlands and was originally named Free Enterprise 3. It was built in 1966 and for many years it served as a reliable ferry between France and England. After it had served its duty for 20 years, it was sold and subsequently resold 3 times within 3 years and renamed each time. Most likely, there was already some problems noticeable back then. In the end, the ship fell into the hands of an Egyptian company and was named Al Farad. After another 12 years of service in Saudi Arabia, the ferry finally broke, so the anchor was cast in the Red Sea and it was simply abandoned there. United States. The United States was the largest luxury cruise ship built in the United States and only had American products on board. The ship was not only huge and beautiful, but with up to 70 kilometers per hour, it was also quite fast, faster than many modern ships today even. With a length of over 300 meters, the United States was about 30 meters longer than the Titanic. Nevertheless, the formerly majestic ship is rusting away in a shipyard near Philadelphia by now. It used to be the symbol of American engineering and the pride of the country, but today nothing of its glamour is left anymore, only the basic framework remains. The ship has been sold several times in the past and was sent around the whole world. In 2011, a group that was funded with donations bought it for only $3 million to turn it into a hotel and museum. However, the restoration turned out to be way too expensive so that, in the end, it couldn't even pay for the berth anymore. The ship was then sold to a shipping company which was planning to get it back into shape and use it as a cruise ship again. But once again, the costs would have been too high, so it looks like the symbol of power of America will soon have to be scrapped after all. Edro 3. The story of the abandoned Edro 3 began in the evening of October 7, 2011. That's when the ship started its first journey with a crew of 9 men and the mission to transport plasterboard to Rhodes. The mission was interrupted by an unexpected storm, however, and after many nights of breasting the waves, the freighter was thrown against the rocks in the middle of the night. Not far away, the Demetrios 2 can be found, which was smashed against rocks and abandoned as well. The entire crew could be rescued by a helicopter, but the ship was completely destroyed. You can still visit it there today because it's not far from the famous sea caves in Cyprus. Those were 10 huge abandoned ships you can still visit today. As you can see, some of these steel giants have a really interesting story. If you want, you can also watch another one of my videos by clicking on the picture in the middle. Until next time, bye!